Microsoft 365 licensing, high level, but what we'll try to do is to introduce you into the concepts of Microsoft 365 licensing. Not necessarily going through each and every feature, but whether you have questions, when you have questions, should you have questions, please ask them in the chat, because let's make it an interactive session. As those who have been to our live shows, they know that we are interactive. Whilst we're doing a bit of housekeeping, we'll start the actual training exactly 3 o'clock London time. If you could, help spread this live event to your friends, invite them. Maybe somebody was, is wondering right now how to manage costs in Microsoft 365. Send them a link to this video on YouTube, share it on your social groups, and we will start soon. And basically, just to spend these 3 minutes before we start the actual training, I'll do a bit of housekeeping very quickly, not to be very boring. So let me share screen. Entire screen. This one. And this is what we're going to be talking about today. Microsoft licensing, Microsoft 365. I think I may have connection issues, so please let me know in the chat if the quality of this connection is not so good. It should be fine. I am recording it locally. It should get better in a few seconds. Say hello. Say where are you from, who you are. By all means, this is an interactive session. And you may notice as well that we are working under the brand of SAMexpert Academy today, which is our spin-off brand, which is a training platform. I'll mention it a couple of times during this training. But we ourselves were a consulting company, and what we explain here is what we do. So, and that is why we don't sell licenses. That is why we present this material in this particular way, from the point of view of license management, cost management, compliance management, practical approaches to Microsoft 365, how to save money, how to stay compliant, how to choose the right approach, how not to be fooled by eager salespeople. We do lots of various stuff, and one of them is financial planning for cloud migration, and therefore Office 365 is one of the things that we do. And Daryl today won't join me. It's just me, Alexander Golev. I am the CEO of SAMexpert. You can find us on LinkedIn. You can go to our website, SAMexpert.com. We also have, as I mentioned, we have another domain, SAMexpert.academy, where you will find all the free of charge training material that we publish on YouTube in an organized manner, plus commercial training. For now, there's only one. It's a massive course for service providers that probably not everybody needs it, but if you want to learn the basics of Microsoft licensing, you can already start it by joining. There's a free of charge training in our training library. Just join it, and all the videos that we've done through already almost 3 years are there. But you can also learn from our knowledge on this YouTube channel, obviously. I mean, I'd be glad if you subscribe. We don't ask anybody to necessarily just, please subscribe, everybody subscribe. If you like what we do, and if you want to subscribe, thank you. If you just want to watch 1 or 2 videos and you want to kind of move on, that's your choice. But what we ask for is, if you like it, please click like, and on this video as well. So, we are almost on time. We need to start, and I only have a couple of more comments for those who will be watching the recording. Look for chapters. We usually, not always, we add chapters, so you can quickly jump between the sections of the video, most important sections. And if we often get the question, can we get slides of this presentation? Yes. If you join the Academy mailing list, we haven't started it yet, so everybody who joins it now has a chance to get all the slides starting from the first part. And this is the sixth episode of this season of our training. We will distribute the slides through our mailing list to subscribers. What we're going to be talking today is Microsoft 365. Microsoft 365 plans, Windows 11, which is connected to Microsoft 365, part of the Microsoft 365 plans, Office 365 plans, again, part of the Microsoft 365, which you'll learn today about, cost planning and management, and compliance management. And I must start with a disclaimer that SAMexpert is not Microsoft. We are not Microsoft. I used to be a Microsoft partner. We are independent now. Daryl Ullman, my business partner, he used to work for Microsoft, again, now independent. And whatever we talk today about is our own experience. This comes from our experience. Whichever thing you learn from us or from any other sources, we always encourage everybody to always verify it with Microsoft product terms. One of the reasons is we can make a mistake. We can misinterpret something. We're usually spot on, but mistakes are possible. And the other reason is if you watch this video in a year from now, there is a chance that this material will be out of date. So always confirm and verify it with the current Microsoft product terms. For example, last year, in one of those slides, I'll come back to that. Last year, we had a slide with differences of Windows 11 plans between the CSP channel, Cloud Solution Program channel, and Enterprise Agreement channel. And in October 2022, Microsoft removed one of the most annoying differences, which really undermined the value of the Windows 11 sold through the CSP channel. And if you watch that previous video, I still mention it as a difference. But if you go to the product terms website, it's not anymore since October 2022. Obviously, today it's an updated training compared to what we did in 2021. So I'll mention it. But then again, I encourage you, always go to the Microsoft Product Terms website. Microsoft is not Oracle. They're not hiding their licensing rules. All the licensing rules are there. They have downloadable licensing briefs, and you can learn from them as well. Therefore, we are not trying to cover every single nitty-gritty aspect of what you can find in product terms. Today, we're going to be talking about the most important aspects. We want to give you the mindset. That's the main idea of these trainings that we do on this channel. So, Microsoft Online Services consist of various services. So, we covered Azure in a different training. Today, we're talking about Microsoft 365. Obviously, there are also additional services such as Dynamics 365, for which we'll have a different training session on this channel. Please watch the schedule. There are power-ups. Again, we're going to run an additional training about power-ups. It deserves an additional training. Power-ups and probably together with Power BI. And there's also Azure Virtual Desktop, which we'll mention today, and Windows 365. Again, that probably won't be a training, but a video on this channel explaining Windows 365 and Azure Virtual Desktops. I don't think they deserve a whole training session, but they certainly deserve a dedicated video because they seem to be simple, but they're not. There are nuances. Nuances depending on what plan, for example, Microsoft 365 plan you have, and however you buy the licenses through either CSP or enterprise agreement. So we'll dedicate a specific session to those. Today, we will talk about Microsoft 365, the bundle. And I heard recently from one of our competitors a very interesting thought, which obviously it's an obvious thing for us, but it needs to be said. Microsoft 365 is not a product. Microsoft 365 are bundles of products. So you go to a shop and you throw in certain vegetables and fruits and milk and pasta and whatever else you buy in a normal supermarket. And that bag of yours is a package. And that's what it is. Microsoft 365. Look at this slide. I mean, we won't go again in every single nitty-gritty, every single square here. But this is what it looks like. The top side is the number. You can see the number of components, little components. Those are the products included in Microsoft 365 E3. And at the bottom of the slide are additional components that you get through Microsoft 365 E5 plan, E5 bundle. So please bear in mind that when you purchase a Microsoft 365 plan from Microsoft, that subscription per user, you purchase a set of products packaged in one single wrapping, E5. It's called E5, and there are lots of stuff inside it, where you can find very detailed diagrams and tables with what's actually included in every single plan. We deliberately decided not to repeat to what that fantastic person, what's his name? Let me check. I don't remember. Well, you can check it yourselves. There's a website that is called Microsoft 365 Maps, m365maps.com. You can open it in your browsers now. Go and have a look, because I don't know a better resource to understand what exactly nitty-gritty things down to very single tiny component are included in which plans. It helps tremendously. It helps during your enterprise agreement negotiations, your financial planning, understanding who needs what, understanding what did Microsoft include in that bundle they call E3 exactly. Do we actually need it? Are we getting the right value? Maybe we just need apps. We don't need all this. You can do this. Obviously, all this data is available in the product terms. All this data is available in additional spreadsheets on the Microsoft website. But these resources, and we're not even, this is not even sponsored. We just really like it. We recommend it. We use it on always, almost on a daily basis. So how these products are licensed. And by the way, thank you for watching. Say hello. There are various metrics, but the majority of Microsoft 365 and online services are licensed per user. It's a subscription license. A subscription license that is supposed to be assigned normally, unless there are exceptional circumstances, to persons. So if you have 10 users that require functionality of Microsoft 365, you buy 10 licenses, one license per each person. They don't normally, not normally, they don't need 2 licenses for the same bundle assigned to one user. And if you have, for example, a shared device and users use that shared device, you still need to license users, because that's license per user. There are very few online services from Microsoft that are licensed per device, and Microsoft 365 normally is not one of those. Power Apps, which we're not talking about today, will have an additional training session. Power Apps are licensed in a bit more complicated way, where you may have per user licenses, but you may also have additional licenses, for example, license per user, per applications per user. It's a bit complicated. Hello, San Diego. Thank you. Yeah, everybody else, please don't be shy. Say hello. How you buy online services, including Microsoft 365, because not everybody knows it. So there are 3 ways to procure them. You can just go to the Microsoft website. If you're a small business, for example, this is what we do, because we're a boutique consultancy. We don't buy them through partners. We just go directly to the Microsoft website. We use a business credit card, and we pay for Microsoft 365 licenses through directly to Microsoft, and we get it from Microsoft. Microsoft calls it Web Direct. I think you need to remember that name, because when you talk to sales representatives of Microsoft or resellers, they will use that name Web Direct instead of online. Normally, it's just Microsoft's internal slang. The second most popular channel, even up until now, in terms of volume, for example, is the volume licensing agreements. Enterprise agreement, for example. Large entities buy online services, especially Microsoft 365, through agreements like Microsoft Enterprise Agreement or Microsoft Enterprise Agreement subscription. This is becoming more popular these days, buying M365 through the CSP channel, which is different to Microsoft EA. And by the way, if you want to understand the differences, on our website, SAMexpert.com, in the articles, we have an article that basically talks about the differences between EA and CSP, and whether we even advise you from our point of view on what we think is a better agreement for your circumstances. Hello, Chris from Germany. Yes, it's 4 p.m. By the way, if you're watching us from Europe, continental Europe, please let me know whether this time is convenient for you, because we used to do these live events an hour earlier, and then we moved them to accommodate American West Coast. I know it's very early, but just an hour earlier, and it will be too inconvenient for Americans to join our live events. So, moving on. So, Windows 11 is one of the online services. However strange it may sound. So, Windows that you buy with your desktops and laptops, that is OEM, that is per device, that comes with the device. And we'll talk about it now, because it's still required. You still must buy it this way to be eligible to upgrade to per user in E3 or E5 Windows, which is Windows Enterprise, essentially, just per user. And those licenses, as I said, they come with the devices, and they're per device. Again, I must reiterate this. You still must buy it like this. If you buy empty computers, you can't upgrade them to Windows Enterprise, because Windows Enterprise is always an upgrade. Always. It's always an upgrade. Whether that's Windows Enterprise per device or Windows E3 or E5, which is per user. They are upgrade licenses. And yeah, hello, Hawal. You may, if you go through the route of Microsoft Online Services and components of Microsoft 365, you may go in different ways. So traditionally, before the introduction of Microsoft 365, what companies used to do is still buying devices with pre-installed Windows Pro, and then upgrading them to Windows Enterprise by buying Windows Enterprise per device upgrade licenses. And I think for the first time I heard about it, it was 1999. So it's going on since those times. Alternatively, now, you could buy Windows E5 or E3 subscriptions and upgrade Windows Pro laptops to Windows Enterprise for the users that have per user E3 and E5 licenses. Again, upgrade licenses. They still require OEM Windows on the computer. Those companies that haven't yet transitioned to cloud or to per user subscriptions, the left side of this diagram, those companies that upgraded to Windows Enterprise per device, they have an option to switch only in an enterprise agreement, not in CSP. They have an option to switch to E3, E5 per user by buying cheaper add-ons. Instead of buying full user subscription licenses, during the current term of the enterprise agreement, they may upgrade to Windows E3 and E5 per user by buying that add-on, and thus switching to per user licensing. And those who upgraded like this to E3, again, only on an enterprise agreement, not on CSP, they may also buy a step-up license. So it is Windows licensing, Windows client licensing, is the most complicated licensing program in Microsoft licensing. There's nothing, in my opinion, more complicated, more screwed up. We have to deal with this. I don't think it's going to change anytime soon. However, there are some things going on in Microsoft to simplify licensing, and one of the examples is what they did in October 2022. Well, not without the pressure from the European Union, but that was a positive change. So this is how Windows per user is licensed. As I said, it still requires that laptops and desktops come with a pre-installed operating system. I can't continue repeating it because we see this every 2 weeks. A new client, and they have some computers without pre-installed Windows, and those are not compliant. So you can make them compliant. You can buy so-called get genuine Windows Advantage licenses, GGWA, which basically like OEM licenses that you buy directly from Microsoft. There's a possibility. If you are in the situation, talk to your reseller, tell them about this, and they'll make you compliant gladly. Well, there are differences in Windows 11 rights that depending on how you buy it. So Microsoft did a very good, introduced a very good change in October 2022 with that package when they simplified bring your own license, VDI rights. They also allowed finally, which was completely nonsensical, to virtualize Windows 11 on premises. You probably didn't know, and if you did that, you were non-compliant before, but now it's fine. But I had a client whom one of the Microsoft resellers convinced to switch to Windows 11 through CSP. It was Windows 10, actually, Windows 10, even the previous version, but still, through CSP. And they told them a long story about the advantages of the CSP program. You know, flexibility. At the time, CSP was flexible, not anymore, not as flexible as it used to be. And the client used on-premises VDIs. Those of you who know what VDIs are, you know. Those who don't, it's basically virtualizing Windows client, Windows 11, in a virtual machine on a server, and then accessing those virtual machines from iPads or thin clients or other laptops. And then Microsoft, who actually approved that deal, told to the client that, by the way, you have on-premises VDIs, you can't use them anymore because you canceled your enterprise agreement and switched to CSP. That was a shocker. That was a very negative message. They resolved it in the end, but that wasn't nice. So the idea that I want to leave in your minds is that the rights that you get through CSP and volume licenses are different, even for the same product. So if you need additional Microsoft desktop optimization pack tools, this is a software assurance benefit. There's no software assurance in CSP. You won't get it through CSP. So if you need it, you need to buy those licenses differently through a volume licensing channel. Windows to Go doesn't exist. Long-term services channel in CSP doesn't exist. And even downgrade rights don't exist for Windows 11 subscriptions in CSP. So nice, isn't it? And that's a big exception to usual downgrade rights in Microsoft. An interesting opinion, Dynamics and Azure are more complicated in my eyes. Dynamics is complicated. We will have a training about Dynamics. It is complicated. But it's like learning languages. Dynamics is almost like that. When you understand the basic rules, what drives that licensing, exactly, you know, the principles of base and attached licenses, then it gets clearer. There are just large spreadsheets of what is attached to what, but Windows 10, Windows 11 has so many nuances. It's much simpler to explain Windows 11 licensing on examples, particular scenarios, than to tell you the whole theory. It's massively convoluted. Anyway, but yeah, thank you for the opinion about Dynamics. I understand what you're talking about. So Office 365, don't confuse it with Microsoft 365. Office 365 is a component of Microsoft 365 now. If you remember the diagram, I'll get back to it just for a sec, that I showed you in the beginning. So Microsoft 365 is essentially a bundle of Windows 11, Office 365, and EMS, Enterprise Mobility and Security. But it all started with Office 365 anyway. So before Microsoft 365, Microsoft only had Office 365. That was the first, as they call it, software plus services product for Microsoft. Not software as a service, software plus service. Still exists. There are various plans. We're not mentioning academic plans in this training, just to simplify it. But academic plans work in many regards similar to enterprise. There are a few perks that academic institutions get on top of normal enterprise perks. Notice that there are plans. You probably know that, but I expect that not everybody knows that not every single Microsoft 365 plan includes client applications that you can install on your local desktop or laptop or on a shared server. So, for example, plans F3 and E1, as you can see on this slide, they do not include downloadable applications. All you can use is web apps. They're pretty good. They don't have all the features of desktop apps, but they're pretty good. So what I noticed today is I opened an Excel file with Power Query queries, and I saw that you can now run them in the cloud. I haven't tried it, but it was impressive. I'm a heavy user of Power Query in Excel, and this is something I want to try. But still, some things are just simply unavailable in the online apps, but most of the functionality is there. Then again, only E3 and E5 Office 365 plans, and consequently A3 and A5 for academics have downloadable applications. All these plans are available in CSP and in Enterprise Agreement. Office 365 has, as many other Microsoft licenses, it may have add-on licenses. If you see Microsoft add-on, don't be, and you'll probably be wondering, asking yourself two questions. Let me rephrase this. Let me make it simpler. Sorry, this is a live training. I need to rewind a little bit. Add-on licenses are usually used to switch from, for example, Office Professional Plus, traditional Office that was licensed per device, to Office 365. So you buy those add-ons. When you buy those add-ons, you need to have qualifying licenses. What you need to remember is that when you purchase add-ons, you must have and keep qualifying licenses for those add-ons. Without the qualifying license, you don't have the right to use add-on license. When if that qualifying license is a subscription license, if it expires, you can't use the version that you get through the add-on. So I hope you understand this. Really not rocket science. There are also licenses that are losing momentum right now because, at least in the Western Hemisphere, with the exception of maybe countries like Germany, majority of the organizations have somehow migrated or introduced Microsoft 365 in their licensing estate. But those who are still migrating and those who continue renewing these licenses, what you need to remember is there are Office 365 from SA, and also I'll mention it, but I need to say it now. There are also Microsoft 365 from SA SKUs, the positions on the price list, and they're discounted. They provide you with the same exact licenses as full licenses, but they discount it as a recognition of your current investment in Microsoft Office with software assurance. You switch to them at an anniversary. Usually they are acquired when you renew an enterprise agreement. If you had an enterprise agreement with Office Professional Plus in the previous 3 years, you haven't switched to Office 365 yet, you may switch to Office 365 or Microsoft 365 by acquiring discounted stock SKUs, Office 365 or Microsoft 365 from SA. There are some limitations on this slide. Really don't need to read into them. You can always go back and put it on pause, but essentially, this is what it is. It's still a full license. And it doesn't require, by the way, it doesn't require you to keep qualifying licenses for a few months. In 2020, like somewhere 2020, 2021, Microsoft required you to keep the qualifying licenses. And they dropped that requirement because it was against the competition laws in Europe. So it's just a one-time recognition of your investment in software assurance. That's what it is. Enterprise mobility and security is a comprehensive. I'll use sales lingo here. A comprehensive mobility and security package for Microsoft with various components that allow you to manage your devices, manage security, compliance, and whatnot. It's a part, again, the third part of the Microsoft 365 plans. I have that slide following. You can see that EMS is there. EMS itself also consists of various components, which some of them we can buy separately, as well as some of the Microsoft 365 plans may be split into components, and some of those components, not all of them, some of those components may be bought separately. Windows 11 obviously is unbreakable. So going back to that slide with EMS, both E3 and E5 are available through both channels if you want to buy them separately, not as a part of the Microsoft 365 bundle. Microsoft 365 now, these bundles. There are more bundles than Office 365, and normally these days, very few companies think about buying just pure Office 365. You can still do this, and it still makes sense for many. But the current journey usually starts, especially for newly opened companies, newly formed companies, the current journey starts with Microsoft 365 plans. And if you go online, I'll open it in my browser now. If you go online, there are basically two groups of Microsoft 365 plans. There's a set of plans for what they call Microsoft 365 for Business. And there's a set of plans which they call Microsoft 365 for Enterprise. There are differences between them, and essentially Microsoft 365 plans for Business have a painful limitation of 300 licenses per plan. The thing that I learned recently, because we had to solve this for a client, is that actually you can mix and match them. You can even have 300 licenses of M365 Business Basic, plus 300 licenses of Business Standard, plus 300 licenses of Business Premium. So you may actually ramp it up to 900 licenses, as long as the functionality of the cut down of the smaller plans still satisfies your users. So you can do that if you want to. Obviously, with larger companies, it does make sense to at least look at things like F3 and E3. In some cases, F1, and for those who have requirements in Microsoft security components, E5 is a good option as well. E5 is the most expensive one. Let me switch back to the browser. So how Microsoft advises you to choose, they basically say it's very simple, and every training says that. Every exam, for example, on Get Licensing Ready, they have questions about it. They may have a question, for example, Contoso is a company of 150 users, and they want full functionality of Office 365 plus security components plus blah blah blah. What would you advise them to buy? And you are expected to say Microsoft 365 Business Premium as the biggest package for small businesses, essentially. You may also notice that they have this license, which is a very interesting license. Unlike the other licenses, which are basically like Microsoft 365 with online services, online Exchange, online SharePoint, online Skype, depending on the package, Skype, Teams, yeah. This one is purely for downloadable applications. So no online services. So apps for business is essentially just apps. It's not a real Microsoft Online service. But if somebody wants just applications and they don't need any other online functionality of Microsoft 365, this is the plan. Microsoft 365 apps for business also come included with Business Standard and Business Premium. They come as a part of those packages. Microsoft 365 Business Basic doesn't have applications. Let me switch back to the comparison slide. It's going to be easier if I show the comparison slide. You can see. Actually, yes, that's what I just said. So there are other features that may be critical when you choose the right plan. So, for example, shared computer activation. When you need shared computer activation, work from home. That's the most common scenario. When you want to deploy Microsoft 365 apps for business or for enterprise on a server in your data center or host it. Now you can, since October, you can now deploy it with every provider. They don't need to be specifically authorized. They don't need to be CSP hostess or QMTH or less mobility partners. Any provider, I repeat, or on premises. And you want your users to have an ability to log in to using remote desktop to that server. You must activate that office, those applications, with a so-called shared computer activation. So shared computer activation is only available in Business Premium E3 and E5. And again, academic plans A3 and A5 as well. It may be critical, because if you only license everybody with, for example, Business Standard, there's no shared computer activation, and you may not use that functionality. They would have to use the apps either on the web or on their desktops and laptops, but no server installation. So if you need it, you need to review a different plan. Windows 11 is an interesting one because, again, although those plans are called Microsoft 365, and as I said, Windows 11 is a part of Microsoft 365 plans, not every plan. So it's not included in every plan. And you can see, for example, that business plans, in the business plans, only a special edition, Microsoft Windows 11 Business, very specific, very special edition, is included in Business Premium. In the enterprise plans, you can see that we have two asterisks against E3 in the F3 row. So F3 plans, frontline worker plans, cut down plans for Microsoft 365 for frontline workers, like your warehouse workers, drivers, salespeople in the shops. Those plans, the F3 plan includes Microsoft Windows 11 Enterprise, but with reduced rights. And, well, strictly speaking, almost everything is available, except for two things. There's no LTSC, so there's no right to install long-term services channel. Those of you who don't understand it, don't bother. Ask your admins. And no Microsoft Desktop Optimization pack. So no MDOP rights. They're not included in F3. If you want that, you need to at least procure E3. Frontline worker plans also have a very interesting device screen size limitation, which is also not. I'll try and explain it in a simple manner. If I am assigned, for example, a Microsoft F1 license, and my main device is a, Chromebook with a tiny screen less than 10.9 inches, then it's fine. I can use that plan. But if my primary device is, for example, this computer that I have here with 24 inches, 26 inches monitor, and I'm the only user of this computer, and that is my primary computer, I may not use F1. That will be non-compliant. How do you track it is a different question. But you must remember that those workers in your office, or even in the warehouse, if it's exclusively their device and it has a big screen, they need at least a 3. However, if you have a reception and there is a computer that is shared between receptionists, whether during the same shift or during various shifts, or it's a warehouse computer with a large screen and there are shifts in the warehouse and multiple people use the same computer and they don't have any other computers, so it's their primary device with which they work, then this limitation does not apply. And there are questions in exams, sometimes not in our exam. I should probably add it to our exam as well. We have an exam, by the way. If you go to SAMexpert.academy, there's information about our exam. We certify on Microsoft License Management, Microsoft Licensing, because Microsoft doesn't do it anymore. So there are questions like Polly and Molly work on the same reception, and they have a modern device with like the best screen ever. Can they use F3? And the answer is yes, because it's shared. Because it's a shared device. It's not the exclusive primary device. Alrighty, moving on. So just bear with me. Traditionally, Microsoft 365 was always sold as bundles. So you place an order for a bundle, you buy a bundle, but the licenses that you would see in your admin portal would be split into single licenses. You buy a bundle, you log into your portal, and you see like a whole list of products and apps and licenses. That's how it was traditionally sold. In 2021, Microsoft introduced a new SKU, which is called Unified Bundle, which is just one license. It's more convenient to manage those. The only downside to that license is it's very difficult to understand whether instead of a bundle, you would be better off with single components. That the internals of the bundle are no more visible to you. So, for example, you can't experiment with just assigning certain components to certain users and then deciding in the end of the year, you know what, I don't need E5 for all those people. I might just need basic functionality plus EMS 3 or something, and thus save money on licenses. You can still do that, it's just more complicated. And I think the idea was to, first, the upside is it's easier to manage. The downside for you as an end client is, well, they wanted to hide it from you. They wanted you to stop thinking about kind of cutting down your expenses. You can still do it. You're not limited. Microsoft 365 has add-ons, and in addition to what we just discussed about add-ons to Office, Microsoft 365 also has other add-ons. So this is the thing that we discussed recently in the licensing update. When Microsoft released Teams Premium was released a few months ago, went into general availability, I think, this month, March 2023. But there are also recently introduced Intune Plan 2 and Intune Suite. And those are not the only add-ons. So Microsoft 365 E5, this is what I want you to understand, is pitched as an all-inclusive package, or you just buy E5 and you get all the features in E5. You get most of the features through E5. There is a list of about 20 to 30 add-ons that you can add to E3 or to E5, depending on the requirements of the add-on. And these add-ons, for example, the most recent ones, they affect the most popular components of Microsoft 365, with the exception of Office, but Teams, everybody uses Teams. Everybody has Teams in their plans. Intune, most comprehensive bundles like E5, it has Intune. Now, if you want additional functionality of Intune, it's not included in E5. You must upgrade it. You must buy an add-on that would convert your Intune built-in to Plan 2 or to a higher suite, even higher. So if you sign an enterprise agreement and everybody is on E5, it doesn't mean that your expenses with Microsoft stop there. You may want at some point to introduce additional functionality, and that will cost you on top of what you're already paying for E5. Please remember that. I already explained about from SA on the Office 365. Here's the same thing. So Microsoft 365 from SA is a full license, full equivalent of Microsoft 365 normal user subscription license. It's just a one-off discount. Microsoft's gesture to recognize that you used to pay them for software assurance for traditional Office. So nice gesture, good discount, an incentive to switch you to online Office if you haven't switched yet. There's one thing though, which is an additional benefit of Microsoft 365 from SA, but it's often misunderstood and it often makes you non-compliant. So please understand this. You may have been told that users licensed with Microsoft 365 from SA may continue using traditional Office even when they don't have the license for that Office, traditional Microsoft Office Professional Plus. Here's the thing, yes, that's correct, but there are limitations, and that's what gets misunderstood. You may only deploy one copy for one user, one copy per user. That's not always a problem, so that is almost like how normally organizations operate. The majority of users have one device, and they may decide instead of click to run Office 365, install Office, or continue using just previous Office, before upgrading to Office 365, only one device per user. That's important. But what's more important is that right does not give you rights to use traditional Office, say 2019 or 2016, in a terminal server. And it's important. Microsoft 365 from SA does not give you a right to use non-365 Office in a terminal server. If you do it now, you need a different licensing strategy. You need to basically, I think the easiest is to redeploy. You have shared activation rights. Redeploy those terminal servers with click to run media. And that that takes away all the headache for zero additional cost. Otherwise, you would have to license traditional Office with traditional Office licenses, which is an additional cost. So watch out, please. There are channel differences. Licenses for Microsoft 365 E3 and E5 give you rights for on-premises Office server deployment rights. And in an extreme case, if everybody in the company is licensed with E3 or E5, in any sort of mix and match combination, you have a right, if you wish to do so. Maybe you have traditional infrastructure, you want to keep your email on premise for some reason in your data centers. You have a right to deploy unlimited instances of Exchange, Skype for Business, and SharePoint without requiring server licenses, without requiring client licenses, if all your users that use those servers are licensed with E3 or E5. If you buy the same E3 and E5 plans through CSP, you may not do that. So pay attention, please pay attention, because we've had cases when, for example, the software asset management person in the company heard that they may do so, but they bought licenses through CSP, and they deployed the servers, and there was a licensing review, and it came as a massive surprise that they can't do this. So yeah, please pay attention. Project and Visio are not part of any of the Microsoft 365 plans, but as we're talking about Office applications, we decided let's talk about them. It's not really rocket science. There are various plans for Visio, so Visio Plan 1, Visio Plan 2, and Project Plans 1, 3, and 5. The highest plans for Project and Visio allow you, contrary to the rights for Office, they allow you to deploy traditional, not click-to-run Project or Visio. But again, there are caveats. It's not like a blank, what's the one I'm looking for? Permission to install to get a license for Project Online and then install Project 2016. And by the way, you can't use Project 2019 or 2021, only 2016 or prior. So only the old versions. You have to play by the rules. So firstly, as I just mentioned, the version must be 2016 or prior. And secondly, the device must be not just only licensed, it must be running Office Standard or Office Professional Plus. The reason Microsoft allowed you to do so is not to simplify licensing. It's only because click-to-run media is not compatible with all Office Standard and Office Professional Plus. So they said, fine, if you use traditional Office, you have it installed, but you subscribe to Visio or Project Online, they're technically incompatible, you can't really run them smoothly on the same computer, fine. You may install Project or Visio 2016 or earlier. You have a right to do so, but only on those devices where Office is running. So, pay attention to the details. The problems are always in the small print. Tenant-wide licenses, I even had a video recorded on this channel, I think about a year and a half ago, where we got about 5 questions from different clients in the same week. So we decided just to record that video because at that moment, that was something new. Now it's a bit calmed down, but you need to know about this. You must know about this. Some of the Microsoft 365 features, it's a technical limitation. They just didn't implement it. When you buy a license just for a single user, even if you have tens of thousands of users, you buy a specific license just for a single user, which Microsoft says that's a tenant-wide license. It doesn't mean that you license the entire tenant. You don't license it for the entire tenant. So it's a misleading name, tenant-wide licenses. It's still a user license, but the problem with it, it's a technical problem, that you enable it for one user, and everybody in the tenant gets access to that feature. The thing is, you can't control it. It's activated for all the users. So, for example, if you have 1,000 users and you bought only 5 such licenses, you assign them to 5 users. If those users are still using, only those 5 users are using that feature and nobody else uses it, although they have access, you're fine, you're not non-compliant. And Microsoft won't punish you. But you must pay attention to who is using these features. And when they need them, when they start using them, you need to buy additional licenses. So this is an additional headache for software asset managers, for licensing managers. You need to keep an eye on such features. You need to know which features are in your company, in your organization, are in use that have these tenant-wide implications. And you need to have control. Some of them, if you search for tenant-wide licenses on the Microsoft.com website, there's a long article saying how you can control some of them through policies, through security permissions. But by default, everybody gets access to them. So as long as only intended users, I have it on the next slide, I think, efforts should be taken. As long as only the intended users access and use that functionality, you are in a safe place. It's more of a technical risk than compliance. You're not going to be punished during an audit unless you do it deliberately, and it's obvious that you do it deliberately. Okay, let's move on. So online services cost management. I want to finish it in 10 minutes, but we'll see. Payments for services. Through enterprise agreement and other volume licensing agreements, you can only pay for M365 services and any other Microsoft Online services upfront annually. If you purchase those services through Microsoft website, online, web direct, or through a CSP partner, you have an option to pay upfront monthly, with the caveat that monthly plans are 20% more expensive than annual. So you have a choice. Whether you want to keep the flexibility and pay monthly, or, fine, I want that discount, and, I want to risk that if I don't know, half of my employees quit in a few months, I'll be left with unused licenses. The choice is yours. So you have the choice. In an EA, in an enterprise agreement, there's no such choice. Enterprise agreement works differently. And this is a slide from our enterprise agreement training. We have an enterprise agreement training on this channel. After this training, you can go back to the channel homepage, go to the Microsoft free of charge training playlist. We did it in February, I think, or in January this year. So in a Microsoft 365 in an enterprise agreement is what like it's going to be on this diagram. This is how you pay for it. So you place an initial order. And because this is an enterprise product, this product is a foundation of your whole enterprise agreement. So you place an initial order to cover, for example, 5,000 users in the very beginning when you sign it. And then you hired 100 more people mid-year. You don't pay for it immediately in an enterprise agreement. What you do is you reserve 100 licenses. You reserve 100 licenses, and comes anniversary of the agreement, so 1 year since you signed it, that's when you normally true up other licenses. What you do here is you place an annual order up front for the second year for the increased number of licenses. In this case, on this example, it's 5,100 licenses for the year 2024 to 2025. But you still have to pay for those reserved 100 licenses, but it's prorated. So you only pay for those months since you reserved them, not for the entire year. So it's not free. It's not the entire year cost. It's a prorated fee. You may reduce them in an enterprise agreement, and that doesn't matter whether that's an enterprise agreement subscription or just a normal enterprise agreement. You may reduce them. For example, in this case, you reduce them to 4,900. Something happened, you fired 100 people. You had, something happened. We're in a bad economy right now. What you only need to remember is that when you reduce the licenses, but they won't let you anyway to make that mistake. When you reduce the licenses, you may not go below the initial order requirements, which differ based on the type of the agreement. So please watch our enterprise agreement training. So this is what you need to understand when you plan your IT budgets. And this license, right now, these licenses form up to 80% of IT budgets, depending on the company. So unless you're a bank or a stock exchange with a massive server estate, this is something you need to know. This is something you need to pay attention to. And this is how you plan it. What you also need to remember is that, obviously, in an enterprise agreement, you can't reduce your license until the anniversary. But it doesn't mean you can't make mistakes with assignments and reassignments and unassignments, and somehow, at some point, run out of licenses, think you ran out of licenses, and then reserve more licenses, and then understand, oh, by the way, we had so many licenses that were assigned to what I call zombie accounts. Let's talk about this. So firstly, assigning licenses is not automatic unless you configure it. So you can do this through policies, you can do this through scripts. You can configure automation with license assignment. As far as I know, there's no simple automation with license unassignment. They want your money. Why would they give it to you out of the box? And importantly as well, whether a license is assigned or unassigned, it's just hanging there, not assigned to a user. So that's another set of licenses which you need to keep close attention to. How many unassigned licenses do we have? Can we tolerate those licenses that we keep just in case? Or should we reduce them at the next anniversary of the subscription, or next month if you have a monthly option, for example? So unassigned or assigned doesn't matter. If they're assigned to a user or not, you still continue paying for them. That's important. But what's more important is not assigning. More important is unassignment of licenses. But let's talk about free trials quickly. So there are free trials available through CSP. And here, what you need to remember is that conversion to paid subscriptions is manual. But let me switch to, because we were talking about assigning and unassigning licenses. You can download reports from your Office 365 portal and basically figure out, if you know how to use Excel, detailed reports from your Office 365 portal, activation and usage details. And you may notice there at least the following things. licenses that are assigned to inactive users. So users are not active. They are not running any apps. They're not using Office 365 functionality at all, but they are assigned licenses. Obviously, you must reharvest those licenses. This is your cost-saving measure. Whether you can reduce them or reassign to other users, this is what we see almost in every state, unless there's some sort of automation. There may be inactive users because they leave us. I put them in a separate category. So users left the company already. They're not just internal inactive employees. They left the company. And we see cases when licenses are still assigned, attached to those users, and the organization continues to pay for those licenses instead of unassigning them from those dead accounts, dead bodies, zombies as I call them, and reassigning them to the users that require them. Unassigned licenses, again, depending on the type of agreement, you may want to reduce that number or assign them to people who actually need them. And the active number, depending on how well the estate is managed, it fluctuates usually between 75 and 95%. So I have never seen, I call it Office 365 usage efficiency. I have never seen it higher than 95%. So what I encourage you to do is download those reports from your Office 365 portal, detailed reports, not summaries, and try and join them in Excel and see how they correlate and see maybe there is something you can save tomorrow on your Office 365 subscriptions. There are tools already, various tools. We won't be talking about particular tools today, but there are tools that help you automate that process as well. Another thing about cost management, which is more strategic, is obviously Microsoft and Microsoft salespeople, they will try and convince you that bundles are always easier, better, cheaper. Just buy a bundle. Don't bother about details. And by the way, they're trying to also manipulate the price list because they removed some of the components that used to be available a few years ago, that used to be available as separate components, and they were quite popular. And they just said, you know what, you can't buy them separately anymore. You must buy a package. But there are still components that Microsoft 365 may still be broken down into smaller components, and you may still mix and match and buy certain subsets of them. And that's one of the things that us, for example, and other companies that help save money on Microsoft 365, that's what we do. We analyze that. And how do you analyze that? You look at personas, profiles, personas. We call them personas. Frontline workers, white collar, blue collar. What's your industry? It really, functionality depends on the industry in many cases. What are their primary devices? May they use reduced plans or even subsets? Are they external users? Do you need a full plan for an external user? Maybe they only need a mailbox, just an email address. Maybe they don't even need it at all. Maybe you need a persona for an external user that doesn't require any licenses at all. What are their usage patterns? Whether they work in shifts or not? So that's also important. And what we also encourage you to assess is not only what you think they need, not only what their line managers think they need, which is valuable, but look at what they actually use. There are various approaches to this. So I know successful companies, they don't care about what the users actually need. They just buy based on what they think they need. It's a working approach. We suggest assessing imaginary and actual needs at the same time. And then you look at the feature list per plan. Simple as that. And there are lots of checklists. Again, I showed you the Microsoft 365 diagram, Microsoft 365 maps diagram. That is an independent map put together by a very clever Australian person. I'm very sorry, I forgot his name. I only found about him today. And I've been using these files for almost 2 years, I think. And I'm extremely grateful to him for doing this. But then you can also download it from the Microsoft website in this form, for example. Contractual requirements. When you think about Microsoft 365 costs, always consider, for example, as I told you, differences between annual and monthly subscriptions, because if it's an annual subscription, you can't really do anything about it until that year comes to an end, and then you can resubscribe. Same on Microsoft Enterprise Agreements. You have to wait until the annuity, until the anniversary of your Enterprise Agreement, when you can reduce or reshuffle the licenses. How you can do some clever stuff. You can buy, for example, annual licenses through an Enterprise Agreement, and then augment. Not every license allows you to do so, but then augment that quantity with CSP licenses on a monthly plan. Some organizations do that, even large organizations, and I know them personally. And also pay attention to minimum order requirements on the Enterprise Agreement. So top cost management mistakes, just quickly, let's run through them. So forgetting to unassigned licenses from leavers. That's like number one. Duplicate licenses. We started looking at them about 3 years ago, and surprisingly, we still find them. Say, same user is assigned a license of E5 and a license of E3. Microsoft doesn't stop you. If you make this mistake, nobody's going to tell you about it. You have to figure it out yourself, or have a tool that shows those duplications for you. And some of them are easy. So for example, in this case, E3 and E5, if you see that assigned to a single user, it's obvious that one of them must be unassigned and reassigned somewhere else. But there may be a component, and you may not know whether that component is a part of the other package that is also assigned to the same user. We see that more often, and this is something that is, well, it's wasting your money. Bigger bundles than needed. Simple. If somebody doesn't need E3 and they are better off, they can do their work with F1. Buy F1 for them, don't buy E3. Full bundles for external users. So external users rarely require full bundles, and we see external users are treated as internal, and they get the same treatment, the same packages, expensive packages. Instead, for example, just an Exchange Online Plan 1, which may satisfy the majority of the use cases. That's money wasted. Full bundles for service accounts. No, don't get me started. Like, there's a robot account, and for some reason it's assigned a full Office 365, Microsoft 365 package. Even if it needs Office 365 for automation, it doesn't need full Microsoft 365. It doesn't need a Windows license or EMS in many cases. So watch out for those. Conference room licenses, they're complicated. They require a separate video. Lots of mistakes around conference room licenses, both in non-compliance and in cost management. So let's go to managing compliance. So a big promise of the cloud. I like this part. Cloud was introduced as a savior. We have cloud. I remember arguing at one conference in 2010 or 2009 when everybody was so excited about cloud is coming. Nobody will care about compliance. The licenses will disappear. They kind of didn't, did they? So it actually complicated things. And even though Microsoft 365 has a built-in feature which keeps you compliant, you can't activate an application or log into a portal if you don't have a license. Still, you may be non-compliant. And here's how. This is how to become non-compliant. Don't try this at home. These are very easy recipes to repeat, but don't do that. Using Windows 10 subscription, use a subscription without a qualifying operating system. So if somebody has a laptop without Windows OEM pre-installed, they may not use Windows Enterprise on that device because it's an upgrade license. This is a pretty frequent still in 2023 case of non-compliance, because it's just illogical. There's no logic in licensing. It's just there's no common sense. You buy a license, it's a corporate license, but you may not use it unless you buy another license with the computer. It doesn't make sense, but it's how it works. Second part is add-on license without qualifying license. Same thing. So buying an add-on license and assigning it to a user doesn't give you a right to use that product, that license, the add-on license, requires a qualifying license. So you need a set of 2 licenses for the full license. Number 3, user licenses assigned to shared accounts. It's actually okay. So let me caveat this. If you have a shared account, for example, called reception1@company.com, and there are 3 receptionists using Microsoft 365 applications and online services through that account for some reason. For some reason you decided not to make a distribution list or a shared mailbox. You decided to create an account and assign a full license to it. To be compliant, all these 3 receptionists also need full licenses. So you can't save money on using a single reception account and share that account with multiple users. All these users require licenses. It's a user license. It's not a device license. It's not an account license. It's a user license. So if an auditor finds this out, you'll be punished. Assuming that rights are similar in the ASCSP. So we had a few slides. If you missed them, please rewatch this training. So I remind you that Windows 11 and Office 365, Microsoft 365, licenses differ in these 2 channels. Licenses purchased through an enterprise agreement have more rights than same licenses purchased through CSP. Apps for business without shared activation. So you may install apps for business with shared activation, but you only have a right to do so if you bought them as a part of the business premium bundle. Only in that case. Only in that case. Not anyhow else. And just another thing that is not directly related to Microsoft 365, it's more of a cloud-related non-compliance issue, but pretty often that happens pretty often, is forgetting that Azure virtual machines, Windows Server virtual machines, in which you may deploy applications, Office 365 for your end users. Those users require remote desktop server CALs, client access licenses, in Azure. It's counterintuitive because we're all used to thinking, in Azure we don't need any CALs. We don't need normal CALs. We still require RDS CALs. So if you do that, you are non-compliant. And that concludes our short training on Microsoft 365 today. So surprisingly, not many questions. I'm happy to, if you type them in the next minute or 2, I'm happy to answer them. What I would encourage you to do as well, so if you like what you just saw, please share this with your friends. Please click like. I don't ask you to subscribe, but please click like. The next 2 sessions have been already announced. It's going to be Windows Server 2022 licensing and licensing in AWS. So April and May sessions are already based on the previous votings. They already preset. But next sessions, June, July, August, we're going to repeat this monthly. We will publish polls like the ones you see on this screen in 2 places, at least 2 places. Our LinkedIn page and our community tab on YouTube. You have a chance. If you subscribe to our channel, it will probably pop up on your YouTube feed when you open it in your phone. There'll be a poll from us asking you, what do you want to learn about in June? So please vote, because we actually take those votes into consideration. And this is how we decide what the next 1 or 2 or 3 trainings will be about. We have a question. What is the minimum company size you have seen audited? Well, if we talk about, there are various types of Microsoft audits. There are audits and there are compliance verification. There are software management services, which are also essentially audits, but not as harsh as real audits. So in regards to real audits, the smallest I've seen was 1,000 computers, but that was in a small country. So if we talk about like mid-sized countries and large countries, I wouldn't expect an audit in a company below 1,000 seats anyway. Microsoft targets those where they think they may recover significant revenue, audit is an audit is an expense for Microsoft, and they want return on investment. So there must be reasonable size, and there must be some sort of a red flag. They have a system, sort of like an AI they bought from IBM many years ago. I'm not sure, maybe they've moved to another one, because that, when I heard about it, it was 15 years ago, that tracks various aspects, including public sources around businesses, their clients, and it gives a very good prediction about, okay, maybe these guys are a good candidate for an audit next time. Obviously, when you're small, I think if you're like 500 users, I don't think there's a massive chance of you being audited. I would rather expect you to receive a letter from Microsoft saying, you're a subject for compliance verification, which is not an audit. You can actually say no. Whether you want to do this or not, it's a different question. You know, if you receive this letter, drop me an email, we can discuss it, your particular case. And it's sort of like a self-audit, or they may offer you like a free software management service, and they send you a partner, and the partner verifies you. That's, Microsoft says it's not an audit. It is like sort of like a soft audit. It's still not what you signed for when you signed your agreement. You may still say no, but talk to the partner before you say no, because in some cases those partners may actually help you to provide you some value, and it's paid by Microsoft. So, but then if you think you're non-compliant, obviously be aware that if they find that non-compliance, you will have to pay for the licenses. Minimum company size, 1,000, in my mind, 1,000 computers. Any more questions? If not, we'll be wrapping up. So you can find us, you can find other training on this YouTube channel, and I encourage you to actually just look for it on this channel. If you want to be part of our newly just building community on the SAMexpert Academy Training Hub, by all means, type samexpert.academy in your browser. It'll get you to our new portal, which still needs some love and improvements, but we are improving it every day. There are other people you can initiate a chat on the community page. You can sign up for the free of charge training course. And if you're interested in service provider licensing, we have more than 6 hours. It's a very long training, 22 modules. That covers every single aspect, but that's a commercial one, every single aspect of the service provider licensing. So from scratch, from basics of Microsoft licensing programs, from the point of view of a service provider, how to use OEM and service providers, how to use ISV, how to use SPLA, how to use CSP, license with software assurance, bring your own license, and everything. There's nothing like that exists. How often do you see repetitive audits? The closest I've seen is 1 year, and I think I have only seen it twice, and I'm talking about hundreds of clients. So less than 1%. Before Microsoft actually shut down and reduced local audit departments, so-called LCCs, and they centralized them, and then they reduced the number of audits. Before that, I would normally say to clients that you may expect an audit every 2 or 3 years. These days, we see repeat audits in providers, sometimes every 2 years, sometimes every 3 years, we see that. Sometimes 3 or 4 audits, in the 12-year history. In regards to commercial clients, we have seen repeated audits, but not that often. So if you had an audit 2-3 years ago, I would say the risk that they may send you an audit again exists. And I'll say something that you might not like, but very few learn from the audit, and they know about it. And if you had a massive shortfall last time and a big penalty, there's a higher chance that continues than not. So repeated audit is a possibility. But to say that I've seen it often, no. Maybe 1 to 2% of all the clients I worked with. Any more questions, please? And let's give it 1 more minute. Let's give it 1 more minute and we'll wrap this up. And just to keep it more entertaining, let me open the web browser again, and I'll show you where you can find what are the next live events on this channel. So obviously, sometimes we publish short videos, sometimes we publish long-form content that is not live, which is pre-recorded. Sometimes we take these live shows and cut them into compressed versions, removing all the stuttering, all the filler words, making them more compressed, more value in a shorter time frame. So here in this line on the channel, you can see that we have, this is today's training. So next one will be 5th of, every Wednesday basically, 5th of April. There'll be a licensing update. We always have a licensing update somewhere in the first week of the month, when we, not on the first day, it's too early. We need to digest. We need to think about what's the commercial impact of those new changes, whether that's a trend, whether that's a strategic thing you need to think about, whether it will affect your budgets. And then we do a live update in which we discuss those strategic aspects of Microsoft licensing updates. We have service provider sessions, and by the way, I've just mentioned self-certification, so we're going to talk about self-certification. It's an interesting subject. Then on the 90th of April, we have Microsoft, our Microsoft contractual optimization, strategic, the green color we use for strategic lives. Daryl Ullman, my business partner, he mostly talks on those. And we will discuss the subject of enterprise agreement versus CSP in 2023, because some things have changed. Some things have changed in a positive direction since last year. Some things became worse. So we want to update you, we want to express our opinion, and we want to give our advice. And then the next training will be about Windows Server 2022, and I really hope that you will come to that, because that is a subject that so many people have requested us to do a training about. We can't just deny it anymore. The community is demanding. So this is going to be the Windows Server training. That's going to be another licensing update, and maybe other live events. And the training in the end of May will be about licensing Microsoft software in AWS. It's not like you can't find that. They actually have a pretty good portal. We'll just digest their portal, that information, Microsoft information, and spit it out in our own training session in our style. That's what's going to happen in May. So yeah, thanks very much. Thank you for being with us. Come again, subscribe, like, you know the drill, share. Thank you. And happy licensing. Could you cover AVD multi-session versus... Yes, I think so. But you know what? I have a request for you. If you could drop me an email to ask@SAMexpert.com or Sasha@SAMexpert.com, that's my private email address, with details, what exactly you want to cover. Let's talk about this scenario, because that would be a much better approach to covering that subject. I would really appreciate that. And by the way, if any one of you, if you have any licensing questions, unless they are completely silly, actually silly questions are also fine, send them to us. But better come to our live shows. Do I need a car for my AVD? Is Azure Virtual Desktop users? No, it's please wait until the dedicated video on the subject. You don't need cows. You need to be licensed in a certain way with certain Microsoft 365 plan, at least. Thank you. Bye-bye.